Well, it is a stark headline. The last person I'd expect, a student arrested after two staff members stabbed at CP Allen High School. And these are, troubling stories when we have violence in our school system. It's by no measure anywhere close to what we see in other places, other jurisdictions, even in our own country. But there were quite a few people upset by what had happened at Charles P. Allen High School on Monday. There's a group that's been around for a while that I wanted to talk about. And in fact, we have talked about. And I'm Sheldon McLeod. This is Thinking Out Loud here on the SaltWire Network. Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education. There's a website. They're active on social media like Twitter and on Facebook. They were actually talking about this a few weeks ago, trying to bring this issue to light. The fact that school violence has become a bit of a concern, a workplace concern as well. Stacey Rudderham has been involved with that group and has been very much an advocate and an outspoken advocate in many cases for public education. And Stacey Rudderham, it's so nice to see you again.
You too, Sheldon. Thank you.
Just to back up a little bit, Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education, what precipitated that? Where'd it come from?
Well, we started out as a group in support of teachers during the labor dispute with the provincial government, while they were searching for and fighting for improvements to classroom conditions for our kids, because their working conditions are our children's learning conditions. And after that dispute came to an end, we realized that there was still a real need for advocacy for public education, and so we became Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education. So, do
you still have kids in the school system?
I do. I have one in junior high and one in senior high.
And when we hear, I know the Facebook community and Twitter community has been very active with people commenting. What's the sense? What's going on? What do you feel is happening right now with the schools?
Well, we're seeing and hearing an awful lot about stresses and, the schools are bursting at the seams with issues that aren't really being managed well. There are issues like mental health that are standing out. School violence is a really big problem in schools across Nova Scotia. I know it's a problem across Canada, but it seems to be a growing concern here in Nova Scotia. It seems as though government isn't really talking about education, and so we're worried that the issues that do exist that maybe are contributing to the violence in the schools are also not being dealt with, and therefore this is going to continue to get worse and worse as time goes by if things don't take a shift very soon. We hear about, like I said, mental health issues, child poverty issues, food insecurities. We have a shortage of teachers and substitute teachers in our schools. We have a shortage of classroom resources and supports such as EAs and EPAs in our classrooms for kids that need those supports. And teachers are left in rooms with multiple children who need extra attention, who are not getting that extra attention just due to numbers, basically, at this point in time.
When just before we started this conversation, you said you'd written about, or the group had talked about violence in schools, and it wasn't something that anyone really was interested in talking about, the media, anyone. And now here it is, this incident at CP Allen. So what does that say to you about, the fact, how you are analyzing what's going on and the people you have who are talking about these, perhaps not in a public way, but through members of this group?
Well, it's I don't know. It seems like it's a really hard subject to attack because, first of all, the schools won't talk to the media about the situations directly. The RCEs are very vague and won't really disclose a lot of information. The data is not available easily. It takes an awful lot for anybody to get any information out of government about statistics and so on. And it seems like it takes a crisis like what happened yesterday to really kind of get people going and get things moving on trying to find out what's going on in our schools. And, as a parent group, as an advocacy group, we appear to be harping about things, or we seem to be talking about things on an anecdotal level. But what we are doing is actually filing FOIPOPs and, reviewing the ones that have already been filed in the past by different groups over time. And we have people in our group who work with data every day, who understand data and understand the complexities, as well as the simplicity of collecting and sorting data and being able to rifle through whatever information and statistics there may be and come up with some numbers that help us understand what's happening. And we feel like that is being withheld in order to just shield us from what's actually happening in schools. One of the major claims that's always made when any approach, we take any approach in trying to figure stuff out, is that privacy concerns always rule any response that comes from government, especially where children are concerned. But the problem is that there is no privacy in these situations when you have cell phones videotaping everything that's happening, when you have social media, just a whirl of information and shared stories, and some of it incorrect and some of it very correct, and we don't know which is which, on the reader's end of it. And, a day like yesterday, one of the big concerns that we have is the lack of communication. Yesterday, there was nothing from the Minister of Education until there was a prepared statement issued too late for any news organization to speak to the minister. And she never made herself available to talk to the media about what was happening in Bedford yesterday. So we feel like she's just avoiding having the conversation about violence in schools. She's refused to speak to us. She actually met up with one of our members at the airport last week, coming home from March break, I guess, and told him she'd make time for him, and then avoided him and didn't make time for him to have a conversation. So unfortunately, we feel like there's just an avoidance. There's no real appetite to take this up and to really resolve it. And I think really resolve the contributing factors that are making violence a priority for us.
No question, there are details that are not public that we don't know, that pretty much it's left to speculation in the absence of facts. The social media world and the internet's really good at making them up. So let's talk about your thoughts on the reaction, or the way that the whole situation was handled. Give me your assessment of how you felt it went. I know you just touched on it, but how was the consensus about the way it was handled?
Well, it was easy to make mistakes yesterday in the moment, and all of the information was coming from a number of different sources. Nothing was centralized. We would have liked to have had maybe a voice of authority, a voice of leadership, a voice of calm, someone who was there to make sure that the facts were being far more numerous than the rumors. There was some anger about school violence, but people really don't know what happened in that particular incident yesterday to be able to speak out about it as being simply school violence. We don't need to know all the facts. We just need to have enough facts to understand really kind of where, the safety issues are concerned as far as the children in the school were concerned and so on. And that really kind of came up a couple of times yesterday with parents saying that they got no notification from the school. And the RCE's response to that was to blame the parents for not having appropriate information in the system to have gotten a text message. Instead of replying with, we understand that there were some issues with communicating with parents. We are going to work harder in the future to ensure that those glitches are taken care of and that this doesn't happen again if, God forbid, we have another incident like this. Instead, they blamed the parents for not providing the right information to the school, to the system that, again, the data is included in, that we can't get our fingers on to be able to assess our situations in our schools. And so it's kind of ironic that they're telling us to fill the data in for them to be able to communicate with us, but they won't communicate data with us that they have already. So.
Okay, so then I know there was a post on the Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education Facebook page bringing to light the fact that there just does not seem to be any channel for communication with parents, that the school advisory councils are not the enhanced ones that were promised after Avis Glaze recommended the dissolution of elected English language school boards, that the schools themselves have changed up how they're presenting information, or that the Center for Education is not necessarily bringing a spokesperson out front of the cameras. So all of this to ask Stacey Rudderham, what should we be doing to make sure parents have a voice and that the schools are responsible to those parents?
Okay, so basically, I think we can start with going back to election time, when the current premier promised to look into bringing back school boards, elected school boards. We had an ability to communicate with our elected representatives in the school board, who was then able to take things back to the school board as well as to the districts to look at resolving concerns, and there was accountability in those days. There were questions asked and answers had to be provided, and nowadays you can't get any information out of the RCEs at all. You cannot get any information out of education and early childhood development. The minister is not communicating with anyone. Like I said, she barely had anything to say yesterday, in a really terrible time when her voice probably would have really been appreciated by a lot of people. And like I say, it all comes down to privacy concerns when you're trying to get information about your, what's going on, even with your own child. If your own child is dealing with a bullying situation, you're still told that privacy concerns prohibit the schools from dealing with you with respect to the other party. And there's no privacy issues when we already know who the other party is. So it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating for parents who are trying to resolve bullying issues or any kind of concerns that they have with the violence that's going on in schools. So.
And I will admit that and the criticisms about the efficacy of the elected school boards, that we could certainly have that discussion and that debate, but there are a lot of people who are just shut off to that whole idea and say, no, that's over, it's done with, we're not looking back, we're looking forward. But what you point out and what the parents are saying is that the world's different with the social media. The kids can't get away from the bullies. They can't. There's a lot going on that people aren't really plugged into unless you have a child who's still in the system. Right.
And it's more than most parents even know how to deal with, because we're not as in tune with what's going on social media as our kids are, and we're not as maybe proficient in the tech world as they are, and so on. So you can't just cut them off from all of it to prevent them from being exposed. That's just, it's virtually impossible to do that in today's age. But again, here we are looking at getting all of our information yesterday via social media, including some of the parents of the children who were in that school during yesterday's crisis.
So what's your advice, Stacey? Where do we go from here? We're having this conversation. I know there are a lot of people on the social media around Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education who are having this conversation. So what next? Where do you go?
Well, I mean, as a group, an advocacy group, we do try to reach out to, the frontline workers in this situation, being the teachers, to learn more about what is going on in our schools. And we really do think that there is an opportunity for the minister, as well as the Department of Education and the different RCEs around the province, to form a bit of a coalition to really look at what the influences are in the schools that are causing all of these problems, and start taking this as a serious lead in how we go forward with our prioritizing education in this province, like we do healthcare, where our investments should be going, where our services should be applied, how we implement those services so that it's not the school's obligation to deal with all of these social issues, behavioral issues, mental health issues, and other issues. We have departments that are responsible for those things. Where are they, and why aren't they taking care of these things so that it's not impacting our school the way that it is? And really kind of work with parents groups like ours and others. There are many parents groups in this province who are dealing with kids with learning disabilities, with health and mental health issues. There's a lot of opportunities to work with the teachers in this province. They're willing and ready to share their experiences and their knowledge, and awareness to be able to be helpful in finding solutions. And I think that we really need to start respecting the education workers in a different way than we have for a lot of years now. They are not just teachers who get the summers off. They are dedicated professionals who went to school for a long time to get into a position of being able to deal with a lot of different behaviors, different learning capabilities, different topics and subjects that they're teaching in our schools. We have EAs that are undervalued in our schools. In fact, I think there's a rally today for our education workers, QP education workers, who we think in our group that they're underpaid and under realized in our education system. They are an essential and important part of our education system. Everyone that works in education is someone special in each and every school where they work. And we need to start really treating them that way and really respecting them that way and listening to them and understanding what is going to make our schools better for each of our kids. You can't say they're safe when a lot of kids don't even feel safe going to the washroom in their own school. So,
well, Stacey Rudderham, I'm not sure what else we can add to the conversation, but I think there's a fear that as parents see their kids go through the system, and then once they're gone, they're not advocates anymore. So
yeah, that happens. People move on with their lives. They, you can only advocate for as long as you have, a real calling to do so. It's difficult for people to stay committed to something that doesn't seem to be moving forward too, which is the case with education right now for a lot of parents. They just feel that we're not making any strides in making things better.
Well, I will leave it at that for now. She is one of the people responsible or has been involved with Nova Scotia Parents for Public Education, Stacey Rudderham. Thank you for staying with this and for sharing with us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.